Live from the Plutopia News Network, this is the Plutopia Happy Hour. And our guest this evening, the return of Screamish Joy. The usual suspects are being suspects right now. There's Susie Sheeler in the Coop shirt. Up there is John Lebkowski in South Austin. And I'm Scoop Sweeney over here in wherever, out in the forest.
Is that a Coop shirt or a co-op shirt?
Yes.
Not Dr. Coop, but Co-op FM.
Co-op FM.
Potato.
It's the only public radio station Austin has to offer that's 100% solar powered. And it's also partnered with KUTX. So it's
I know,
cool.
my company built their website at one point, though.
Yes.
They may have changed it since then.
They have, but it was just, that was not too long ago. But yes, that's right. You guys did. It's a good play. I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I think there are some people back in the studio, but I think it may still be closed. I just don't know. I know that Rag Radio is still doing our broadcasts from home.
So Co-op's not broadcasting 100%?
Well, they're doing their normal, they are looking for shows right now, but people are doing their shows from home and then sending it in, and somebody's there to, you know, play everything in. But no, they are not at full capacity. And I'm assuming, I don't know this for sure, but I'm assuming they're letting KUTX pick up that slack because that's who they share with.
That's too bad because they had a lot of nice programming. It's just difficult to do it at home. We know all about doing it from home. That's all we've ever done on this show.
Yeah. It's very different from being in a studio.
You know, I'm wearing my Plutopia t-shirt.
I need to get one of those.
We're solar powered.
Is that 100% cotton?
The sun every day, and that's what keeps me going.
There you go. But yeah. You know, local folks are taking a hit, but we are still trucking. Look at how strong we are.
That's because we're diversified. You know, we're spread out, so they can't get us all in one big raid. You know, they have to go out and search. That's part of our plan to take over. I don't know, something.
How are you doing, Mr. Lukowski?
Well, I've got allergies and I'm really sore from being out on the lake today. But otherwise, I'm just happy as can be, fit as a fiddle, and really happy that Screamish Joy is not just our guest tonight, but is gonna be with us regularly.
What?
Yay. It's such an honor, honestly.
The honor is all ours.
We're going to teach you.
I was so happy I wore my smiley t-shirt.
You have to learn the secret handshake and the company motto. We don't have one yet, but when we have one, we'll teach it to you.
We'll put it
I'm
on
really
Google
good
document.
at coming up with mottos.
We should have a motto, shouldn't we?
I'll bet
People don't understand.
Yeah.
The people don't understand what we're about because they see, on the one hand, there's this Plutopia book that has something to do with, I don't know, some city that got exposed to radiation, I think.
Sounds like us.
And there's Plutopia, which was a cartoon featuring Pluto Pup that Disney did at one time.
That sounds like us also.
Aww.
And there's actually a former planet named Pluto. So Plutopia might suggest that, but I was having to explain to somebody the other day, this is portmanteau, Plutopia is, of pluralist utopias. And if you just think about that, you'll get an idea what we're about.
Yeah, it needs portmanteau in a storm, I always say.
Yeah, you do have to kind of explain it to folks, but it's such a unique name that the fact that they ask in the first place will make it stick. So I think it's a great name.
You know, utopia gets a bad rap, and you know, like people will say techno-utopian, and that's supposed to be a bad thing. And that's because, you know, idealistic and impractical and all that. But I don't think there's a damn thing wrong with having utopian thinking. I think there's a place for it.
Define utopian thing. I'm thinking Thomas More right now, because to me he really showed why utopias don't work. But if you're talking about a different sort of Plutopia,
It's
utopia.
It's like a kind of idealized sense of something saying that everything is going to be perfect there. So techno-utopians thought that technology was going to make everything perfect and okay, and it was going to be a cure. Actually, I never knew anybody who really believed that 100%, but that's kind of what people talk about when they say you're techno-utopian. So utopian thinking is about, this sort of imagined state of everything being perfect. And you're not going to get that, but it doesn't hurt to think about it.
So like Elizabeth Holmes. She came up with the blood machine, Theranos, right? She came up with the blood machine, the techno, but it was a failure, just like so. But I think that striving for Plutopia and understanding that they could all, well, do you think they can define that? Tell me how pluralist utopias come together, and what do they form? Do they form this gestalt of utopia?
Well, pluralism sort of affirms diversity within some like political body or something like that. And what we were talking about at the time somebody came up with that word or this portmanteau, we had done as an initial project before we even had a name for ourselves, right? So we had this idea of doing this sort of future-focused events, doing it like having a kind of think tank, putting them together. And the first one that we did was called the DIY House of the Future, the Do-It-Yourself House of the Future. And the idea was that various technologies were coming together in such a way that houses could become more and more configurable and serve more and more the ideal sense of what somebody wants their house to be. And you could move into a house and like hack things, and move them around to make it your sort of perfect house. So in talking about that, it was like, yeah, everybody can have their own like perfect thing. And somebody said, well, that would be like pluralist utopias. I think I may have said that. And Dave Damaris said, well, why don't you call this Plutopia?
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. No, I love that. I love that story. And I love that story. I just wanted you to tell it again.
Yeah. And I've never heard it. I've never actually heard it before and didn't actually know the origin of the name. And it's interesting for me, like, as you described what you were describing from the sort of utopic thinking perspective and this mindset. Today, I just reshared a post that I share pretty much annually, and it's on the ideal of like, forced positivity versus kind of like not dwelling in states, in negative states, and like choosing to sort of dwell or stay in more joyful or say like uplifted states, so moving through emotions, experiencing them and feeling them, such as sadness or anger or whatever, but not just like getting stuck in that space. And so when I think of utopia in the way that you were describing it as this house, I think of my own like personal agency of myself. And so when I think of pluralistic utopia, is that we all get to exist within ourselves in a way that we can choose joy, that we don't have to be burdened by the sort of judgments of others or the sort of rejections that others put on us. And that by doing that, we ultimately do create sort of this more global utopia because we are allowed to truly be present with who we are. So like, that's just it. And that to me, that's utopic thinking, is the idea that I have that my house, I am my home, and it doesn't really matter what I'm physically living in,
yeah, exactly.
And I've had that experience, I am my home, and having personal agency and having choice and having a sense of value and a sense of purpose and fulfillment and worth. Those are things that allow me to live in a joy state, which is ultimately, a heightened state of purpose, I guess is how I think of it.
And a sense of responsibility. I think that's a huge part of it too, because a lot of people don't consider that a virtue, quite frankly, And I think, it's very much part of a moral person who wants to participate in society. I think so. That's having that is, I think, important too, a sense of responsibility, and I think you do, and that's really cool.
Well, since you're joining the lineup of the usual suspects, tell us something about your journey to becoming Screamish Joy. Where'd you come from? Where are you headed?
Where are you going?
Where did I
Where you go? Where you go, my Joe?
Well, I'll start at the end, and I totally and absolutely want to change the world for good. Okay. No, I do. I really do. I want to have impact in the world, and I keep trying to find ways to do that.
Interjection just real quick. You have had impact on so many people. You have, I don't think you have any real idea of how many people you impact. And those are people you work with and for, and your friends. You're a very good friend, and you're a deep thinker, and you're a great listener. And now I'm going to be a good listener. Please continue.
Thank you for all of that, Susie. And yes, thank you. Screamish for me came about in an interesting way. And it came about because in my kind of late teens and early 20s, when I would say before I was pre-diagnosed with complex PTSD, it was really common, and it may still be, I don't know, but it was really, really common for particularly men to find it very amusing to walk up behind me and scare me because I would scream, because I had PTSD and I was in a constant state of trigger shock. And all you would literally have to do is touch me and I would scream. And to this day, bless my husband's soul, he has methodologies of how he enters the house and comes into rooms and does things to just try to respect the fact that it's still an easy trigger for me. But for a really long time in my life, it was just sort of a joke. It's just sort of something that people had fun with at my expense. And somebody referred to me as Screamish. They're like, "Oh, you're so Screamish. You scream all the time." I'm like, "Well, quit touching me, and maybe I will stop." It was just like nobody seemed to get that it really wasn't that funny.
The two are tied together.
Yeah. So the Screamish came first. It really did, and the Screamish, was real. It was my PTSD stems from very complex childhood medical trauma. And I have a very complicated childhood medical story. I was born with lots of extra body parts, and
we actually, I think, discussed that. I think we did discuss that.
Yeah, and so I have this history, with my health, and as that progressed in my life, I somehow kind of am a weird trauma collector. I didn't seek out, it's like you never try to collect things, just people start giving you frogs and all of a sudden you have a frog collection, right? Like I wasn't out seeking to collect trauma. It's just, all of a sudden, I'd been through.
How many surgeries had you had by the time you were 21?
By the time I was 21, probably around 11. I've had 17 or 18 total. But I spent the first 2 years of my life in hospitals basically, and having lots of experimental surgeries. And so, that early level trauma, PTSD was barely talked about. PTSD for maybe, Vietnam vets was maybe acknowledged in, 1969, 70, and 70. But there were actual studies that I found that during that period of time, the predominant medical thought was that infants, especially, couldn't really feel pain, couldn't really experience pain. And so a lot of times, a lot of medical treatments and things that happened to infants were done without real anesthesia or without substantial amounts of anesthesia. They definitely did not use narcotic anesthesia on infants. And it wasn't until I found a study in 1980 that two physicians did, where they actually put together like several studies to prove that infants actually felt pain. So that was 1980. So
you mean when you slap a child and it cries, that they can't figure that out? They have to actually do studies for that?
The belief system was that it wasn't retained memories, and that the pain experience was different for
an infant.
And like the closer you were to birth, like there was also like sort of this misguided belief that the birth process, because it was so traumatic, would pass on like sort of this certain ability to not feel pain that infants outgrew. And what I have personally come to believe is that we actually all start out with PTSD because of the birth process. It's like just something.
Oh
so
my
anyway,
God. Okay.
I wasn't diagnosed. I wasn't diagnosed with PTSD until I was in my late 30s, early 40s, and that came about through a lot of behavioral challenges, and just I was a high functioning trauma person. So the joy came after, and the joy really came from going through a long process through the medical community, of which I have just a lot of experience, as being a patient in the medical community, to sort of understanding and finding my own medical agency, and with my own mental health, with my own physical health, and being able to kind of learn how I could process trauma in different ways, non-pharmaceutically, which for me was important because a lot of my other health issues. And so, yeah, that's where Screamish joy. And I just, over time, the joy became more important than the scream. But the Screamish part of who I am is, it's an edgy side of me. I have a really natural dark side, and sometimes a odd and strange sense of humor, which feels like it's going to fit into,
I believe you're correct.
Yes, which I feel I'm among my people in many ways. But yeah, and so, joy for me came through connections with nature, and through connections with myself, and really more intentional connections with my community. Like really just, I don't know how else to say that. Just really, if I'm having a relationship with somebody, I'm accountable to it, and it means something, and it matters, and I really try to live in that space of accountability. And so yeah, so that's me. That's the Screamish joy.
Well, I'm looking,
and I love Halloween, and so I'm in my season because Halloween started on August 14th. I don't care what anybody else says. And
well, I'm looking forward to talking with you on our various shows about medical care and the medical profession. I financed all of my groovy escapades by working for a big medical care company in the Bay Area, Kaiser Permanente. So I was on the end. I saw how medical care, or the lack thereof, actually works. And when I came to Texas, I was horrified because, our company had hospitals, and you didn't go to all these independent labs and doctors and x-ray places. It was all in one place. You got one bill. You had one doctor that said, okay, you go get this lab and this x-ray. And
a lot of places are doing that now, though.
and
Like in Dallas, if you go to Dallas, I mean, everything is in one complex. Everything is the UT Dallas complex.
Yeah.
And it is amazing.
Which totally makes sense.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
generally it's still that that balkanized billing process of you get, when I had a heart attack here in the beautiful Central Texas, I got so many different bills and different doctors. I was in
Wow.
St. David South.
And that really, honestly, it benefits the insurance industry, and it benefits. I mean, it's so anti-patient.
The medical groups, all these individual medical groups, they have agreements like, well, we'll treat your patient and you treat ours, and we'll keep going back. So you get sent to some place that already has an agreement of, anytime you get somebody with this condition, send them over to us, and
right.
We'll reciprocate or pay you off. There's a lot of that goes on in the medical field. So I look forward to getting you involved, and let's go get them, because it just pisses me off to see what gets represented as good medical care here in Texas.
Well, this is probably a good time for me to chime in about my experience with the medical community. And it's as a co-founder of this organization, the Society for Participatory Medicine, which is all about putting the patient in the driver's seat.
That's a great idea.
I don't know about those chickens
it's
they
what
have
has
on
to
there.
happen.
And we've been like working on that for years, patient empowerment, basically.
Yeah.
But in order for that to really happen, the insurance industry has to be addressed, because it's ultimately what controls medicine, and
I think
the
that
medicine that you're able.
after COVID, it is going to be addressed, because they are not going to be able to charge for pre-existing conditions. They are going to have to eat it on the medications. That nobody's going to be able to afford their bullshit anymore, and they're going to have to figure something out, because everyone's going to go broke.
Yeah, the problem.
It's a very, very, very. I mean, I worked in the industry, and it's in our very capitalistic society, it's not gonna just go away easily. It's very, very integrated into our medicine, and other, we all know this. Other progressive societies are not dealing with this. This is something that is pretty uniquely American in the way that we have been disadvantaged by this.
What scares me about Texas and medical care is, I lived, in California, in the Bay Area for 40 years, even though I grew up in Texas, and I was used to the regulatory environment there. The one that the Republicans here are always saying they're going to Californize Texas. It's like, you would be, wanting to do that, because what they pass off as regulation in Texas is just like, oh, we'll just slap you on the wrist. You don't do that too much, and don't do it public.
Or we don't have it at all.
Yeah. And the doctors, I mean, they can screw up horribly. And that's like, well, we investigated, but we decided just to give them take a course, in being a nice doctor. It's like, great. That'll really teach them a lesson.
Well, it's hard to know that. I mean, it's hard to gain the confidence unless you've had to deal with these people like on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis for a really long time. It's really hard to speak in their vernacular, which, immediately makes their ears prick up. It's hard to it's hard to be assertive. And because you speak their vernacular, you can be confident and assertive. And if you don't know, if you don't educate yourself on what's going on with you, and you can't speak relevantly about what's happening to you and accurately with your doctor, then they're going to assume that they are in the driver's seat. And the truth is, you're paying them. They work for you, and you should research your stuff, and you should go in. Don't Google it, but research it, and then go in and speak to them on an intelligent level. And I guarantee that they will pay more attention to you.
That definitely matters. But the reality is that, again, the insurance companies are actually paying them. And
not if I don't go.
They are much more. I mean, it absolutely, you have to be an advocate to yourself in our system. And I've had some very fantastic physicians. I'm not, I very much believe in medical care, and that we have a lot of, obviously, people right now out there who are providing enormous amounts of medical care to a great lack of appreciation by a lot of people too, I might say. The medical care in our system is really precarious, and I don't even think we recognize how precarious it is in that regard too, just of medical burnout. And our very capitalistic system contributes to that when they don't allow doctors or physicians to make decisions that they know that they need to make. When insurance companies control things, based on either pre-existing conditions or just what they think they will pay. For the example, why do we separate dental care from health care when our teeth are so critical to our actual health in our body? Like our teeth are directly related to our heart care, or in our heart health, our teeth are directly related to, so it's the way that this stuff in our society is very fragmented. It's not to the patient's benefit. And, the more that you can advocate for yourself, the better. You're definitely, going to get more attention being a stronger self-advocate, because there are plenty of people who, don't know how to, don't have the capacity to. I mean, they're in any situation I've ever been in without an advocate, especially in a situation where I might not be in a capacity to be able to directly advocate, has always made me feel in jeopardy. I mean, it is something that I think is just as socially as a society, because of the way our system is structured, patient advocacy is just critical in order for I think, and we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system. And I think that we all know that. I think our system is really dedicated to promoting sick care, otherwise we wouldn't see so many commercials that I am constantly blown away by the side effects on commercials, where I'm just like the drugs that are put out into the market, and trying to understand I don't know. Again, we have a sick care system when there are certain things that we don't address at all, such as, food supply in our system, and, different things that really do actually contribute to real health, and the health of our just communities. And so it's I don't know. I know it's complicated. I know it is, but I do know that it has to start, at least for me, it had to start with patient advocacy and by advocacy, taking responsibility for my health. Like, I'm a partner with my doctor. So the things that I can do to help myself stay healthy, help my physicians keep me healthy. It's like they're not constantly working against some, and then I have to consider that for myself.
Science too. It is science, and that's supposed to be a real good thing, as far as I understand.
Well, if you can cultivate, like within the community of physicians, a sense of, acceptance of the idea of patient empowerment, and acceptance of the idea that the patient is a partner in their own treatment. The patient knows what's going on with their body better than the doctor does. The doctor, really, a physician applies a template thinking. I mean, they sort of look at you and try to match you to what they have learned and what they have experienced. in others, but everybody is a unique individual. And it only makes sense to bring the patient into the conversation about therapy, to try to learn as much as you can about what's unique about them, you know.
And what you're doing in the program that you showed, are you familiar with with the term functional medicine, and in terms of like what that it's kind of a movement towards, if you look up sort of like,
define it for us.
I think there's like functionalmedicine.org or something like that. But if you look up functional medicine, it's a movement towards sort of this holistic approach to medicine, and like looking at, at the body, and really more looking at root issues and working outward versus, symptomatic treatment of issues. And, Western medicine, like I always like to say, like if Western medicine has excelled at trauma treatment, if your arm gets cut off, if you're in a serious wreck, like if you need immediate, like, stop things, Western medicine has really, really powerful skills in those arenas. But Western medicine just sort of ignores these very important issues like mental health. And I mean, it's yes, we're all, finally starting to be able to talk about mental health more and its impact on the physical body. But even subtle health, like subtle energy body health, which gets into, more deeper level into your central nervous system and the energy in your system, is like Western medicine just really doesn't even look at that.
It's just it's not really about wellness. It's about fixing a problem, and not about preventing a problem.
That is exactly right. And that's why they're so good at trauma stuff, because they it fixes things. Yeah. And so when this is broke, we can fix it, and that's exactly what it's geared towards. So it's like really trying to balance that other side of it and say, hey, that's fine. If I fall out of a tree, I am like gung ho that you can fix my broken leg, but I'd like to still be strong enough to climb the damn tree. Okay. Like I want to get up there. It's like, I don't want to be this weak, sickly person that's dependent on, and what happens in our society, we're having supply chain issues. There are people who are dying because they can't get their insulin, or even the cost of their insulin. There are people that are just flat out, they have very manageable, treatable diseases that simply because of a supply chain issue, or simply because of a cost, or they're literally dying. And those things are not, I guess from my perspective, it's like, I recognize that I'm going to have dependencies throughout my life on many, many things. I just look where I can reduce those dependencies for myself, because I've spent, months at a time in hospitals, and I've been deeply dependent on the medical care system. I have a lot of respect for it. But I also don't want to use more than, my fair share of it. And I absolutely feel like I already have, it's like, I want to find a way to have less invasive, treatments on my own body. So that's been my path. That's been my path for a while. It hasn't stopped me. I've had, since I went on this sort of like self-patient, I've had at least 6 surgeries, since then. And knock on wood, I hope I don't have more, but there's at least 2 that are already, pretty much set in stone. So it's just something that I know that I'll always have to deal with. I want to be able to be strong and able to, when that happens, like I said, I'm a partner with my physician in that. They're not just there to fix me. We are there to collaborate on making sure that this awesomeness continues to, function in its best capacities. And so, that's my attitude, and that's my joy. Frankly, I choose joy. It's like I just do.
We're lucky to have the medical care in this area and in Central Texas around Austin. There is a lot of medical care, but I have friends all over Texas, and there are medical deserts all around Texas. You cannot find a doctor, much less a hospital. If you find a hospital,
can't keep them open.
There's a good chance that it's either closed and gone out of business or is in the process of closing because people don't have insurance. And that's a whole different issue. It'd be it would be great to have universal health care, but that's not going to happen as long as we have Republicans around. But the whole idea of these people want to provide, these doctors out there wanted to provide health care, but they weren't getting paid anything because no one had insurance. They come in, when their leg has been chopped off and they have to treat them, but they can't afford. More people are destroyed by medical debt than a lot of other really bad things, crime and disease, can devastate anyone, no matter, what their position in the world. But some people have insurance, so they're able to get that taken care of. If you don't have insurance, it's over for you.
If you have insurance, depending on what you've got, I mean, you get cancer that's going to last for 30 years, or you're on a drug that's going to last forever. It's
at the beginning of 2020 is when I had my most recent surgery, and it's always great to find out that you're going to have surgery right at the beginning of the year because that's when all your deductibles roll over. And so my surgery was scheduled for January 21st. And as you were talking about earlier, coming into Texas with all of the, so first, I had to go see my pre-op people, and I had to go have a meeting with the surgeon. I had to go meet with the anesthesiologist. And every single time I went to one of these visits, because I did not have a deductible met, each visit was met with, okay, and we're going to need you to pay us $5,600 today. And my surgery was scheduled a week out. Okay, exactly. So I had exactly 7 days to prepare for this. I had to come up with over $14,000 in cash to pay to get my surgery done. Now, granted, I had insurance, and so it was definitely. But I remember sitting at an appointment one day. It was at my pre-op appointment, and at that appointment, I had to pay $3,000. And there was a woman there, and I sat in tears while I watched that woman I don't know what her surgical need was, but it was clearly dire. Yeah. And they were sitting there telling her, well, we need $2,200 from you. And the look on her face was, she was not going to get her surgery. She just flat out was not going to get operated on, and they weren't going to work with her on it. And it was, that is our system. That is our system.
Yeah, it wasn't long ago. I was at the grocery store. I was at the pharmacy, and there was a woman there who was picking up her child's asthma medication. And she couldn't afford it because they didn't have insurance, and she had to walk away without her son's fucking asthma medication. There are people who are going without diabetes medication. It's just,
it is happening every day. And for our partners, we put all of that on credit. We didn't have cash to pay for any of that. We were just fortunate that we had credit cards, which is really not fortunate. We still haven't paid that off. And, knock on wood, that another major medical incident doesn't come up before we can. Yeah. And that's just, we're fortunate and we're privileged. We have insurance, we have good insurance, and we are privileged. And yet, that is not the case for the vast majority of our country.
But here's the deal. Do you owe, when you get your bill, who do you owe? Insurance company or doctor and hospital?
I pay the doctor in the hospital.
Yeah, normally,
and then they file.
And insurance is what you pay to get your coverage. They just pay what they think they are going to cover you for, and you're on the hook for anything left over. That's the deductible.
Correct.
Okay,
correct. So, that is exactly right.
So because I've been in that system. It's been a long time, but I've been in that system, in the Medicare system, and it's the I had United, I think. They did the same thing. I would only pay the doctor and and you can barter with these guys, right? And Seton, like a lot of hospitals will say, we're writing off everything that's hospital related, and now you just owe the doctor. And you can talk to the doctor sometimes and say, I will pay you half of it. That's all I can afford. And they'll take that. That doesn't happen all over the place, but there have been a lot of people who have done that. The fact is, though, is that you don't have to do it. And so this
was pre-scheduled. Like, they wouldn't even schedule the surgery until I made these payments. And my out-of-pocket deductible was over $8,000. That was straight out of my pocket. And so they would not even schedule. And so some of the departments would say, you can put down 25% now, and we'll put you on a payment plan to have it paid off within 4 months. Some of them said, no, we need it all right up front right now. It was, each one was different, yes, but none of them would schedule without a substantial amount of, like, they flat out wouldn't schedule the surgery until it was paid.
That's possibly related to the individual facility, because before I got to be an old guy, I had insurance, and it was good insurance. But when I had a situation that was going to be expensive, they would confirm that the insurance was good. But when I became on
that's all they wanted from me.
This had never happened to me before. They didn't
bother because they knew Medicare would cover it. And the whole idea of Medicare for all has a lot of, there's a lot of good about that whole idea.
Oh, yeah.
You'll never be able to get it past, the medical community, because they don't want to just be relying on being covered by Medicare.
Well, I'm afraid of what's going to happen to Medicare, quite frankly. Because I depend on it, and I don't know.
You and me both.
Exactly. And John, I'm sure, and I know my parents, and Stephanie, your parents, all of and y'all I currently am getting it because of my health, but my generation may be the last to see any of it. Our government has, excuse the metaphor, but raped our Medicare and Social Security money. It's just, they've diverted to other programs. And so they say it's broke. It's not broke currently, but if they don't pay that money back, it will be in 20 years. And they're not going to pay that money back. So, they used it for wars. We're not going to get that money back and put it in the coffers of public health and Social Security. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, the only way it's going to happen is by making sure that the people that were responsible for that bad behavior are no longer in office. You know what that means? People have to organize and elect people that are going to do the right thing. There are some around still, but right now it's kind of 50-50, literally 50-50 on whether stuff that's good for the people gets passed.
I think there's and it's unfortunate because my general motto is change brings change, but nobody seems to like change. But our system, especially our medical system, in the way it's not really fixable. It really needs to be actually rebuilt and restructured and fully redesigned. And I know that it seems so big and undoable, but it's like putting on it's like Austin traffic. They could have thought about it a few years ago, or they could continue to never think about it and get it done. Change has got to happen at some point. At some point, you just got to say, hey, we got to try to move things forward and make it better than what it is. But the current system itself is functionally broken. It just really is functionally broken. And, so I think that challenge there, it feels big, but I always feel like things feel better when we're working closer to home. Like when you talk about the medical deserts, and the first thing that comes to my mind is there's no more local doctors, truly small town doctors, small town physicians who like truly, you know, like know and connect with their patients. Those places are literally just abandoned. You know, it's not even that they just don't have, they don't really have medical care at all. And a lot of those places are also food deserts too, in a lot of ways. Like they also don't have a lot of access to really great, healthy food opportunities or options either. So they seem to, you know, sort of perpetuate each other and go hand in hand. And I think we have to like look at our communities like that and, you know,
and also take
like
into
recognize
account the fact that there are people who can't, who live in places who aren't food deserts, who don't have enough on food stamps to buy anything that is good enough.
Absolutely. No,
so
absolutely.
They're eating all this processed shit that's full of sugar. And of course, you're going to have a whole bunch of people with diabetes. You know, I don't understand why this, as we were talking about earlier, holistic and preventative care is not a bigger deal for a country who won't even pay for health care. I mean, don't you want us to know how to eat?
Because there's a 700% markup on insulin, and you can only get an extra $1 for the cucumber. I mean, it's really pretty. It's just, it is, you know, there's a direct correlation, you know, to the food health of our society and the health of our society. I just think that at its core, we don't have empathy for each other, and we've been sort of conditioned not to. And a lot of people have just really been conditioned to not have empathy at all in ways that, you know, we can't coexist that way. We can't function if we're all just
individualism,
you know, I mean, like
practicing individualism.
Food and health.
Yeah. Do you guys remember the food pyramid when we were kids? Yeah, I think we had the same one that you had, John and Scoop, when y'all were growing up. I don't think it changed from your generation to our generation. But I wonder, Stephanie, you had a kid in the public school system. Did it change at all? And John, you have some grandkids in public school. What does the food pyramid look like now?
The food pyramid has changed, actually. So we talked about this when I went through culinary school. And so the standard American diet, otherwise known as the SAD diet, is what is represented in the food pyramid. And the food pyramid has actually changed many times, even throughout our lifetime, when we were kids. And a lot of the changes, like actually this food pyramid that you're showing up right now, looks healthier than almost anyone that I've seen, in that it actually has things like healthy fats and whole grains, like it says these things out loud, or not. It says tofu on it. I mean, that's like got to be the most progressive food pyramid I think I've ever seen.
It's having.
Historically, the food pyramid has been really primarily driven by by lobbyists. You know, so when the milk lobbyists were paying lots of money, milk was really the most important food. And, you know, when the ketchup lobbyists paid lots of money, ketchup became really important.
Vegetable.
I mean, like whatever, it really was a driver, you know. At the end of the day, you know, the pyramid itself is never really been a very balanced way, you know, I mean, it certainly gives a guideline. It certainly gives kind of a structure, but it has shifted throughout the years, and a lot of that shifting has had to do with lobbying and just, you know, who wants their food
good.
To
not
be,
that it's good for people, but that whoever's paying the most, whatever. Because I do remember the milk.
It's certainly correlative. There's certainly a correlation there, you know.
I'm certainly glad that the oil company lobbyists haven't gotten involved with that, because we have a food pyramid with gasoline and oil incorporated into it.
Oh, it's already in there.
Well, we do already. As a matter of fact, I got to do the research on this, because I did not do the research, but it was talking about petroleum and food.
Pigs in a blanket and cigarettes.
That's awesome. 1960. That's perfect.
Encased in Jello.
Daily, not weekly. Daily, 8 to 10 servings daily. That's actually beautiful.
Well, it was the 60s, man. Everybody had fondue pot.
So no, this is talking about petroleum products in our food. So Cheetos have petroleum products. Roll-ups, like fruit roll-ups, have actual petroleum products in them, and they're marketed as healthy snacks for kids.
Subway had yoga mats in their bread, that yoga mat stuff that's made from plastic, petroleum, stretchy stuff. Whoa!
Yeah, so it is already.
Yeah,
it is
don't,
already in our,
don't even think about the insect parts and rat parts that are allowed.
Oh, that's called bread conditioners.
Insects, actually, insects are the least
on your bread
of my concerns.
right. If you ever look on your bread, like bread bat, whatever sack, and it gives you all the nutrition information, there's something called bread conditioners that's on there. And that is code for rat and insect feces and hair, etc. And they call it bread conditioners, and they're only allowed a certain amount to go in there. But I mean, even if it's 1%, I don't want to see that. I don't want to, because that's
I am much less concerned, honestly, about any sort of natural thing in my food product than I am about, say, phosphates or I mean, there's so many chemicals that are actively killing us, and I've eaten crickets as a salad topping at Daidoui.
But the rats are being poisoned, so
they were toasted. Well, this is my point. I mean, no, I don't want to eat. This is not my point. My point is that there are just so many, like, really.
But my point was that bread conditioners, I mean, that happens in a factory where you're going to have that, and those rats are being treated with poison as well, and probably the riches.
I buy my bread from H-E-B Bakery. Yeah. I'm going to check their label, but I am going to hope that H-E-B Bakery isn't going to have bread conditioner on their label. I'll look, though.
Yeah, I don't think that fresh bakeries do. It's the factory ones. Yeah.
Factory made, yeah.
Like and Wonder Bread.
I do try hard, not use sparingly fats and oils. Yeah, I like how you keep bringing up different versions, because there are so many different versions of the food.
Yeah, there's a bazillion of them out there. Wow. But I prefer the ones that have candy on them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I like the ones that start with cannabis, but I mean, we all have our food pyramids.
The one with Martinez was nice.
Yeah, we all have our pyramids.
Yeah,
we all have our pyramids.
My wife's grandmother, when she immigrated from Portugal back in the turn of the last century, worked in the Del Monte canning facility in Oakland, California. And I talked to her a number of times about, well, was it really as ugly as we've heard? She said, "Oh, I don't ever eat anything by Del Monte, even though they pay my pension."
That's interesting.
I lived in.
Is that out on Cannery Row?
One of the things they don't identify as an ingredient is clumsy employee body parts.
I lived in Sioux City, Iowa, which was right next to Iowa Beef, and it was the highest paying job that you could get in the area was at the Iowa Beef production plant. And it pretty much, I eat local meat. The stories of and we had the where they burn, like, I can't remember, where they would like burn all the carcasses, they have the plant, and then we
have one here
it was not pleasant.
Wait, what did you say, Scoop?
We have a rendering plant
rendering, thank you. I couldn't think of the word.
Wind from where we live here in this part of Bastrop County, and if the wind is coming from the east, you will probably get it as well, since you're down here. And we have
where is it? Where is the rendering plant?
It's over by Highway 21 on the eastern side of Bastrop County.
It's just so gross.
They render all the dead pussycats and dogs and cows and whatever, and
it's bad.
And if they're being a little bit lax on their, because they have supposedly environmental regulations they have to abide by, but they abide by it as long as someone's watching. But we have people in our neighborhood that actually keep a track of it, and the state says, "Oh, well, we'll talk to them," and they go out and tap them on the wrist and say, "Don't stink it up."
Oh my God, I'm sorry. That's really a hard one for me to.
Yeah, it's really hard if you want to go out and get a breath of fresh air, and you go, "Oh no!" They go.
Yeah. When we were in Colorado with Whole Foods, John, you'll probably remember, we were in, what was the name of that little town? What
Thornton.
Was it
we were in Thornton, Colorado.
Thornton, Colorado. And it was, you would walk out and was it pigs? It had to have been pig farms. I never smelled anything so bad in my life. We were just right next to, I'm pretty sure it was a pig farm. Do you remember?
Wow. I hadn't thought about that in a long time. I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
That smell was overwhelming. I'll never forget it. That's where I went. We went to some popular restaurant and we ordered chips and queso, and the woman referred to it as queso, and we were like, "Oh God, no, no, no!"
I literally don't think I've ever heard anybody say that.
we had many adventures back then. That's
oh my God, yeah, we did.
God,
that was a crazy place to be.
I had a Kyle Conquizo, and it's like, what?
Conquizo.
Conquizo.
I can get you.
It was child.
Oh, child.
So we had at Whole Foods Market, we had put together a pretty good e-commerce site, and we were selling just everything, all kinds of stuff via mail. And we had free shipping. Somebody once ordered a literal ton of soy milk, which cost about $800 to ship. So we had, and I said to the marketing guy, I'm sure you remember the marketing guy, sure, Susie.
He was my
I said,
boss.
maybe this free shipping thing ought to have a limit on it. He said, "Oh no, we shouldn't." Anyway, but then we started this thing up in Colorado, and it was going to be a multi-business unit, like huge operation, and we had a big fulfillment center that we were building there, and I mean it was just going to be this great thing. And then the .com bust happened, and they completely freaked out about it and said, "We're not going to do this." They sold the thing off.
They launched, and we had this huge ass party for the launch. And
it's real funny. Yeah, we launched
Cisco.
We launched at the same time the .com bust was happening. Same month.
And like the next day, John Mackey had all these people come out who were working there and who were still left over, who hadn't gone home for the party. But it was mostly, I think, the marketing team in San Francisco, and said, "Yeah, we're shutting this down."
Great party.
The party was great. It was the next day.
It was the next day that sucked.
Fortunately, I already had another job. I mean, in fact, my old boss was meeting my new boss so that he could tell her that I was worth being, you remember John, he was a dick.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I was kind of devastated. I had invested so much of myself in that thing that we were doing,
I think a lot of people did.
Yeah. 128 people were laid off.
Yep.
At once. Yeah.
Well, the good thing about Plutopia News Network is there are no layoffs.
That's right.
Yep.
Layons. There's no layovers. You're just stuck.
There's no money changing hands.
Yeah. Come on, man.
So welcome, Screamish Joy, a new victim, a new partner.
Yeah, and she's got some fun people for interviews too, so that's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time.
I just wonder if you guys saw what I flashed on the screen a while ago.
What?
Again, there's a law against that, John.
Well, I will show you. Let's see. There we go.
Oh, look at you. You're sitting on a paddleboard.
I just thought I should show this because I was complaining earlier.
Day.
It was a beautiful day. We had kind of a great time out there, even though, when you get older, all of your joints seem to be like dysfunctional. So if you're on something where you have to sit in an awkward position and paddle, it kind of hurts.
Yeah.
Well, when the joints
don't want to do that.
That's when you need to do it.
Anyway, well,
that's why I don't exercise.
we have actually reached the end of another hour, and it was a very great hour. I think that I certainly think that the whole medical establishment they're quaking in their boots right now. Did you hear those Plutopia guys?
We're coming for you.
I'm like, please be nice when you see me next.
All right. So goodbye, everybody. Looking forward to next week.
Yes.
Bye, y'all.
Welcome, Screamish.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Off we go.
Bye.